paradrama tales.
Last weekend, I babysat for a sweet 2-year-old who fell asleep in my arms within minutes. I spent almost 4 hours quietly sitting on their couch, barely lifting a finger. But when the parents came home, they joked and then insisted they'd only pay me for the 20 minutes of actual work. It left me feeling confused and undervalued. When I first started babysitting for this family, everything seemed straightforward and easy. They live just down the street, and the little girl is absolutely adorable, sweet, calm, and easy to handle. I'd been watching her occasionally for a few months, mostly evenings here and there. So we had a good understanding. The parents were friendly, and the pay was fair for the hours I put in. Last weekend, they asked me if I could watch their daughter from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. while they went out for dinner with friends. I agreed without hesitation. It was a usual gig, and I thought it'd be an easy, relaxing night. I arrived right on time, ready to do my job, expecting the usual mix of feeding, playing, and bedtime routine. What made this night different was how quickly the baby settled. Within 20 minutes after a bottle and some cuddles, she was fast asleep in her crib. I was honestly relieved. Babysitting can be exhausting, especially with toddlers, but this felt like a calm, quiet night ahead. I settled onto their couch, pulled out my phone, and started scrolling through social media, occasionally glancing at the baby monitor, just to be sure she was still sleeping. For nearly 4 hours, I sat there ready to spring into action if needed, but the house remained peaceful and quiet. When the parents returned around 9:45 p.m., they were surprised to find their daughter had been asleep almost the entire time. Then came the comment that caught me off guard. The husband half-jokingly said, "Dang, maybe we should just pay you for the 20 minutes of work," and his wife laughed along. At first I laughed too, thinking it was just a harmless joke. But then to my surprise, they handed me cash for only 1 hour, saying, "Honestly, we feel weird paying full price when you didn't really do anything." I was taken aback. It's easy to think babysitting means constant activity, playing games, changing diapers, or entertaining a restless child, but the reality is more complex. Sometimes it means being present, alert, and responsible even when the baby is peacefully asleep. I still had the responsibility of making sure the baby was safe, and I was there in case she woke up or needed something. That night left me with mixed feelings, grateful for the experience, but also feeling a little undervalued. It made me question, when does watching become working, and how do we measure the value of presence? That night, as the baby quickly fell asleep, I found myself with an unexpected amount of quiet time. Usually babysitting means constant movement, playing, feeding, changing diapers, calming tantrums, but this night was different. Within 20 minutes, the little girl was peacefully snoozing in her crib, and the house settled into silence. I remember sitting on their couch, phone in hand, scrolling through social media to pass the time. Every so often I glanced at the baby monitor, just to make sure she was still breathing and comfortable. It felt like a strange kind of work, no action, no noise, no activity, but with the underlying responsibility of being present and ready. As the hours passed, the quiet stretched on. Time seemed to slow down, and I started to question what exactly counted as work in a moment like this. I wasn't actively doing anything, but I couldn't leave or relax completely because I was still on duty. My ears were tuned for the slightest sound, my eyes checked the monitor regularly. That kind of alertness isn't always visible, but it's crucial when you're responsible for a child. It was during those long, still hours that I realized how invisible some forms of labor can be. From the outside, it might look like I wasn't working at all. I was just sitting scrolling on my phone. But inside, I was on high alert, ready to spring into action if the baby stirred or cried. Babysitting isn't just about the moments of chaos and noise. Sometimes it's about the quiet moments of vigilance, the peace of mind you provide to parents when they're away. That night, I was the safety net, the watchful guardian, even if nothing happened. When the parents came home, I thought they'd appreciate that peace and quiet was a good thing, an easy night for all. But their reaction surprised me. Instead of gratitude for a calm evening, I was met with a comment that made me feel like my presence didn't count unless I was constantly busy. It made me reflect on how society often measures work by visible effort and overlooks the quiet, steady responsibilities that keep things running smoothly. That night, I learned that sometimes the hardest work is the work you don't see, and it's just as important. When the parents came back that evening, I expected a warm thank you and maybe a quick chat about how peacefully their daughter had slept. Instead, what I got caught me completely off guard. The husband half-jokingly said, "Dang, Maybe we should just pay you for the 20 minutes of work," and his wife laughed along with him. At first I laughed too, thinking it was just a harmless joke, maybe a way for them to acknowledge how quiet and easy the night had been. But as the conversation went on, the tone shifted from playful teasing to something more serious. They handed me cash, but not for the full 4 hours as usual. Instead, they gave me payment for just 1 hour, saying, "Honestly, we feel weird paying full price when you didn't really do anything." It was a surprising moment that left me feeling a little stunned and frankly taken aback. I understood why they might think that way. The baby was asleep almost the entire time. And from their perspective, it probably seemed like I barely lifted a finger. But the truth was very different. Babysitting isn't always about constant action. Sometimes it's about being there as a safety net, the person ready to jump in at a moment's notice. The responsibility is constant, even when it looks like nothing is happening. That night, I was on alert, watching and listening, prepared for any sign that the baby needed me. That kind of care can't be measured simply by visible activity. Their decision to pay less felt like a dismissal of that invisible work, and it left me wrestling with feelings of being undervalued. I didn't argue or try to push back. I didn't want to make a scene, but inside, I felt conflicted. Was my presence not enough? Was the responsibility I held not worth the full rate? The experience made me question how we define work and how we value the effort we can't always see. It's easy to assume that if someone isn't busy running around or doing chores, they aren't working hard. But caregiving, especially babysitting, often involves quiet vigilance and patience work that's just as important, even if it's invisible. That night's payment surprise wasn't just about money, it was a lesson in respect and recognition, and a reminder that sometimes what counts most isn't the noise we make, but the care we quietly provide. That night, as I reflected on the parents' reaction and their decision to pay me less, I realized something important about the nature of babysitting and caregiving in general. The value of presence often goes beyond active tasks, beyond feeding, changing diapers, or playing games. Sometimes simply being there is the most critical part of the job. When you're caring for a child, especially a young one, your presence is a constant safety net. Even when the baby is asleep and the house is quiet, your role is far from passive. You are the person the parents trust to step in at a moment's notice to soothe, protect, and respond if anything changes. That quiet vigilance is invisible labor, but it carries immense responsibility. Being physically present means that the parents can enjoy their time away, knowing that their child is in safe hands. That peace of mind is priceless. It's easy to underestimate the emotional and mental load that comes with babysitting, especially when nothing seems to be happening. But that readiness, that attentiveness is work. It requires focus, patience, and maturity. I realize that presence is a form of care that's often overlooked because it doesn't fit the traditional idea of work. People tend to value tangible actions over silent responsibility. But the truth is, the moments when you're quietly watching over someone, ready, alert, and available, are just as important as the moments filled with activity. This lesson applies far beyond babysitting. In many professions and relationships, the emotional labor and silent support we provide often go unnoticed. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. That night I learned to appreciate the importance of being present. It reminded me that care isn't always loud or busy. It can be calm, quiet, and steady. And those qualities deserve respect and fair compensation. For anyone who's ever felt like their work goes unseen or undervalued, remember this. Your presence matters. Sometimes just being there is the greatest gift you can give, and it's absolutely worth honoring. After that night, I found myself wrestling not only with my own feelings, but also with the reactions of those closest to me. When I vented to my sister about feeling shortchanged, she immediately sided with me. She said, "They were being cheap. You were there doing your job, and you deserve to be paid for the full time, no matter how quiet it was." Her support made me feel validated, like I wasn't overreacting. But not everyone shared that perspective. Some friends and even family members questioned whether I was right to expect full pay when the actual hands-on work seemed minimal. They said things like, "If the baby was asleep the whole time, did you really do 4 hours of work?" Or, "Maybe it's reasonable they only paid for what they saw you actively doing." These comments made me doubt myself, wondering if I was being too rigid or unrealistic. This conflict exposed a broader issue about how society views certain types of work, especially caregiving and emotional labor. People often value visible physical effort more than quiet responsibility. When a job looks easy or uneventful, It's easy for others to underestimate the true effort involved. The tension between my sister's unwavering support and others' skepticism reflected something deeper. It showed how we can be caught between wanting to assert our worth and navigating social expectations that sometimes diminish the value of what we do. For babysitters, nannies, and caregivers, this struggle is all too common. I realize that discussing fair pay isn't just about money, it's about respect. It's about having your work acknowledged and valued even when it doesn't fit conventional ideas of effort. My sister's encouragement reminded me that I had every right to expect fairness regardless of the silence that filled those hours. This experience also made me think about how we talk about labor in our communities. Care work, especially the kind that happens behind the scenes, often gets overlooked or undervalued. But that doesn't mean it's not essential. Through all these mixed reactions, I learned to trust my own judgment. I knew that my presence mattered and that it was okay to expect compensation that reflected the responsibility I carried, even on quiet nights. It was a lesson in standing firm even when others question your worth. As I continued to reflect on that night and the mixed reactions I received, I realized something important about the delicate line between gratitude and fair compensation. So, often, especially in caregiving roles, like babysitting, people lean heavily on saying thank you, as if that alone is enough to honor the work done. But here's the truth. Gratitude is wonderful, but it isn't a substitute for respect and fair pay. When the parents handed me less money than expected, they were polite and appreciative in words, but their actions didn't match that gratitude. They laughed about the situation and said they'd make it up next time, but what I really needed was clear acknowledgement that my time and responsibility were valued equally every time, regardless of how active the babysitting was. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if someone says thank you enough, they don't owe more. But for those of us who provide care, especially care that involves constant vigilance, even in quiet moments, a simple thank you can feel like an afterthought when it's paired with less than fair compensation. I started to see how this boundary between gratitude and payment is often blurred. People want to be seen as kind and generous, but sometimes their gestures don't match the true cost of the service. That leaves caregivers in a tough spot where their emotional labor is appreciated superficially but not honored concretely. This experience taught me that gratitude and payment serve different purposes. Gratitude acknowledges the human connection and appreciation, but payment respects the professional responsibility and commitment. Both are important, but neither should replace the other. For anyone working in caregiving or service roles, it's crucial to recognize your worth. You deserve to be thanked warmly and paid fairly, no matter how quiet or easy a particular shift might seem. Being present, ready, and responsible carries real value even when it's not loud or obvious. I left that night feeling a mixture of emotions, gratitude for the opportunity, but also a quiet resolve that next time I would be clearer about what I deserve. Because saying thank you is beautiful, but fair pay is essential. And both together are how respect truly shows up. That quiet night made me think deeply about something called invisible labor, all the effort and responsibility that goes unnoticed, because it's not loud, messy, or easily measured. Babysitting isn't always about changing diapers or entertaining a fussy toddler. Sometimes it's about quietly being there, alert and ready. That kind of work rarely gets the recognition it deserves. Invisible labor is everywhere in homes, workplaces, and communities. It's the mental load of remembering schedules, the emotional effort of staying patient, and the physical presence that reassures others. When I sat on that couch scrolling through my phone, but constantly checking the baby monitor, I was doing important work even if it didn't look like it. Many people underestimate or overlook invisible labor because it doesn't fit the traditional image of work. They think if you're not visibly busy, you're not working hard. But that's a misunderstanding. Invisible labor requires vigilance, responsibility, and care that can be exhausting and stressful. For caregivers, this kind of labor is a daily reality. Whether it's a babysitter watching a sleeping child or a parent managing a household, much of their work happens in silence. It's emotional, mental, and physical labor combined, and it deserves recognition not just in words, but in fair pay and respect. That night, I realized how easy it is for invisible labor to be taken for granted. The parents assumed because their daughter was asleep, my job was done. But the truth is, I was still working, protecting their child, ready for anything. That readiness, that silent watchfulness, is a responsibility that can never be put on pause. Recognizing invisible labor is the first step toward valuing it properly. It challenges us to see beyond what's obvious and appreciate the effort behind the scenes. For those who provide care, validation means more than thanks. It means fair treatment and acknowledgement. This experience opened my eyes to a broader conversation about how society values different kinds of work. Invisible labor might be quiet, but its impact is loud and clear. It holds families together, supports communities, and sustains relationships. So next time you think about work, remember not all effort shouts. Sometimes the most important work is done quietly with love and vigilance. And that work deserves to be seen, respected, and valued. After that night and all the mixed feelings swirling inside me, I realized something essential. I had to stand up for myself and know my worth. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect, recognition, and valuing the work I do, even when it isn't flashy or loud. At first, I didn't argue when the parents tried to pay me less. I didn't want to cause tension or seem ungrateful, but deep down, I felt taken advantage of. Babysitting is more than just playing with a child or changing diapers. It's about responsibility, readiness, and the trust parents place in you. When the baby is asleep, you're still on the clock, still accountable. I started to reflect on what it means to assert your value in any job, especially one where much of the work is invisible. It can be scary to speak up, to say, I deserve full pay no matter how quiet the night was. But if you don't, others might assume your work isn't worth it, or that it's okay to pay you less. Standing up for myself meant setting boundaries. It meant clarifying expectations before each babysitting job, the hours I'm paid for the responsibilities I take on, and what fair compensation looks like. It also meant being prepared to walk away if those boundaries weren't respected. I realized this lesson applies to more than just babysitting. In life and work, many of us face situations where our contributions are overlooked or undervalued because they're not visible or don't fit traditional ideas of hard work. But that doesn't make them any less important. Knowing your worth is about recognizing the unique skills and care you bring, even if others don't always see it immediately. It's about trusting yourself enough to demand fairness and knowing that self-respect is never wrong. So, now I feel more confident. I understand that my presence, vigilance, and readiness are valuable. I deserve to be paid fairly, and I'm ready to say so, not with anger, but with calm conviction. To anyone who feels unseen or undervalued in their work, know this. Your worth isn't defined by others' opinions. Stand tall, speak up, and claim the respect you deserve. Because when you honor yourself, others will learn to honor you too. As I wrap up this story, I want to reflect on something bigger than just babysitting or money. It's about valuing care and respecting work in all its forms. That quiet night sitting on the couch while a baby peacefully slept might seem simple on the surface, but beneath that stillness was responsibility, vigilance, and trust. And it's a reminder that work isn't always measured by hustle or noise. Sometimes the most important work is the silent, steady presence we offer. For anyone who's ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed because their job wasn't flashy or loudly visible, I see you. Caregiving, emotional labor, and invisible work carry tremendous weight, even if the world doesn't always recognize it. It takes patience, dedication, and heart qualities that deserve appreciation and fair compensation. This experience taught me that respect is more than a polite thank you. It's recognizing that every role has its own challenges and worth, whether we see the sweat and struggle or not. And it's about setting boundaries, knowing when to accept less and when to stand firm, knowing that your presence matters even when it's quiet. I hope this story encourages you to look at the work around you with fresh eyes, to appreciate those silent efforts, whether it's a babysitter watching a sleeping child, a caregiver tending to an elder, or anyone whose labor isn't always visible. Let's give credit where credit is due. If you've ever been in a situation where your work felt invisible or undervalued, please know you're not alone, and it's okay to speak up for yourself. Your worth is real, and your contributions matter deeply. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share your own experiences in the comments. Let's create a community where care and work, seen or unseen, are honored and respected. Because at the end of the day, valuing care means respecting the heart and effort behind it. And that respect starts with us. Stay strong, stay proud, and always remember your worth.